Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and today we'll be talking about Kul Tirans and Zandalari racials, since we can finally test them out in PTR in patch 8.1.5. And in today's video, I want to talk about the racials. Are they strong? Are they busted? What is the potential for them to be overpowered, the strongest racials that everybody is going to be re-rolling into? And what effects will they have in different parts of the game? Now, we've seen new racials in the past. We had the Magha Orcs, Dark Iron Dwarves, Void Elves, Lightforged, High Mountain, and Nightborn, but none of the racials have ever raised the same question of, are they overpowered? During a certain point back in Legion, we did think that the Void Elves were looking a little bit too strong, maybe, but with the Zandalari and the Kul Tirans, 100% heal, choose your own racial, the longest stun in the game that can be used in PvE, as well as PvP, do look like racials that a lot of people are looking out for. In today's video, I just kind of want to look at them, dissect them a bit, and find situations where they could be very, very powerful. Let's first start with the Zandalari racial. The Zandalari have a couple different racials that make them look very appealing. We'll talk about the first one, which is regenerating. This racial have made a lot of people question themselves, like, is this a little bit too strong? And a lot of people have a good reason to believe so. Regenerating reads, it will channel for 4 seconds a heal, which will heal you for 25% of your maximum health every 1 second for 4 seconds. That means in just 4 seconds of a channel, this racial heals you for 100% of your health. Now, this racial doesn't seem the worst in certain situations. If you're looking at dungeons, raids, as well as PvP. In certain raid situations, it could be kind of cool to have, let's say, a tank like a warrior that has 0 self-healing, leap away from the boss and channel his health in a very crucial, dire situation. Or again, a warrior in a battleground, an armors warrior rushing head first, knowing that if things ever go bad, he'll just run away from combat, fear his enemies, channel a heal, and get right back into combat. I feel like for certain classes, this racial could be a little bit fun and very much needed, especially the classes that don't have insanely good healing. But also, I feel like this racial in PvP situations could be very, very annoying to play against because of its very short cooldown and the fact that it heals for 100% in just 4 seconds. Imagine that on a feral druid. We've been dueling ferals and 5-5-1-1 duels on this channel for quite a while, and ferals already have insanely good healing, but add this to a feral who's already got a feral druid, heals better than a restoration druid with this racial, and I don't think there's any comp, any class, any playstyle that could beat that in a 1v1 situation. So this racial can be annoying to play against in certain key situations, but is this racial a game breaker? Not really. I do think that a lot of people are eyeing Zandalari just for that heal, because it does look appealing. But simple fixes Blizzard could do, maybe reducing how much it heals down to 50% of your health over 4 seconds, even 75% over 4 seconds, maybe increasing its cooldown from 1.5 minute cooldown up to 2. Anything could make this racial a little bit more balanced and more in line. But is it busted? I think it's far from it. Would have been much worse if it was some kind of ability that hits you for 50, 75, or even 100% of your health over 4 seconds. I think the pterodactyl swoop is the coolest racial ever. Goblin glider that can be used whenever you want to while leveling, we're doing world quests, and you don't even have to buy a goblin glider, is one of the most fun racials ever. But can it be useful in PvP or PvE? It does have a long cooldown, so if arenas stand as they are, I don't think we'll have a bunch of Zandalari hunters disengaging and then going for a pterodactyl swoop just to get away from players in 2v2s or 3v3s. So we're not going to see anything busted like that, but it's an awesome racial regardless. And then you have all your Loa, and the Loa I thought were busted. I thought it was the strongest thing ever. There's a Loa for healing, Loa for tanks, Loa for shadow damage that will refund back health, Loa for a bleed, Loa for a crit, Loa for 5% movement speed. We don't really know how the Loa will work. We do know they're going to have some kind of a cooldown, maybe. We don't really know if we'll be able to change out our Loa buffs at whim, or it will actually be locked down to 25-day cooldown like it is right now on PTR. So most of us can just make a Zandalari, choose a Loa, and just stick with it. Make sure you never right-click it off because you'll never get one back. So all we can really do is test out those racials separately. It doesn't feel like those racials are proccing an insane amount. I mean, at least they don't seem like they're proccing a trinket's worth of amount. A trinket might do maybe 6, maybe 5, maybe 4, maybe 3% of your damage. These racials are doing about 1.8 at most. So they're very similar to like the undead racial for extra random shadow damage plus a heal that comes with it. It is not going to be a game breaker that lets you win or lose against a boss or in a PvP fight. I think it's awesome to have a lot of variation and variety in terms of some of these racial options. 5% crit sounds pretty awesome. Are you going to be able to use it to win a certain fight guarantee? Not exactly, but is it awesome? Hell yes it is. To be playing a warrior, knowing that you're going to be dueling rogues, to have an extra bleed on top of your damage, let's say you're a fury warrior that doesn't get a bleed baseline, for racial to bleed up a rogue as the vanish so the bleed takes them out of stealth, I think that sounds amazing. But is it going to be a game breaker that will just completely obliterate the competition? Don't think so. So for the Zanda racials, we are having the heal that is a very, very powerful option. Is it going to be game breaking? I think it's far from it. That heal is very powerful and Blizzard will do some changes with it if they need to. We also thought the Dark Iron Dwarves in PvP were going to be insane because a lot of classes put a bunch of debuffs, and to be able to take off those debuffs with your burst with how much intellect, agility, or strength you got, Blizzard realized that the racial was very powerful and you could easily control it. So of course we're going to tune down the amount of stats you were going to get out of it. So Blizzard is going to tune it if ever necessary. So on its own, let's say the healing racial was in line, or if it's not a big deal, nothing else about Zandalari screams overpowered, but definitely very powerful, definitely very fun, and definitely a good addition for the Horde. And next we got Kul Tirans, and there's literally nothing that the Kul Tirans are bringing to the table, unless you're a tank, that's going to change your gameplay. Kul Tirans themselves got fairly, I guess, benign racials. They're not really game changers, they're not going to do insane amounts of damage. They are situational, but mostly for PvP situations. The racial for Haymaker is the powerful racial that everybody's talking about. What this racial does is it provides a 3-second stun after 1 second cast. It does have a fairly long cooldown of 2.5 minutes, so you're not going to be using this racial every time, in every situation. And by that 3-second stun, how is it different compared to some of the other racials? Well, the 3-second stun doesn't have a diminished returns with normal stuns. That means if you're a rogue and you want to go into a kidney shot, into cheap shot, and then you want to layer Haymaker on top of it, the Haymaker as a 3-second stun after a full kidney and 2 cheap shots, still gonna have a 3-second stun. Now, I haven't got to test out the Haymaker to see if it has its own DR or no DR, because maybe Haymaker is just treated as a separate stun. But what we do know is that you can add an extra 3-second layer of a stun on, let's say, a player. This is why I said Kul Tirans seem like a very PvP-oriented race. I think this could be insane for any class that doesn't have a CC, like a stun, or any class that needs a little bit extra. What we've seen in the World of Warcraft ladder is that Pandaren actually have become a lot more played because of the 3 seconds extra incapacitate gouge-like effect that comes with the racial. That 3 extra seconds can actually allow certain comps that know what they're doing a little bit extra time in crowd control in order to get a kill. So when you're replacing that, instead of incapacitate, with a stun that doesn't DR, it doesn't matter what kind of CC you throw on an enemy, you're always going to have a guaranteed stun with 1 second cast time that you can throw into an enemy as a 3-second stun, whether it is on a kill target or a target you're trying to CC. This gives a lot more versatility for the Alliance when it comes to PvP related situations. This racial itself is powerful for PvP, but in PvE, when it's not against a player, it is still pretty strong. Still has a 3-second stun, still a 1 second cast time, the same exact cooldown, but also a small knockback against any enemies in PvE. So if you have, let's say, a certain mob that runs in, maybe they have some kind of a debuff or a buff they provide to their allies, you can knock that mob way out with a 3-second stun. So it has some potential use, and I could see certain groups utilizing it, but it's not like a universal. But just to give an example where this racial would be good, that would be a decent option where the racial would be used. Outside of that, you don't really have anything amazing. You have extra movement speed while swimming and extra breath. You also have the resistances from frost and nature abilities, so nothing exciting there. You can also heal for a portion of the damage that you are taking, so this would be pretty good and valuable for tanks and some DPS. Of course, for tanks it would be a lot more important because you're always taking damage from the boss, so you'll always heal for percentage of the damage that the boss gives you. I don't think there'll be any ways to abuse this kind of playstyle, but I do want to mention that it is there. So again, Kul Tirans don't really bring anything exciting or interesting or different when it comes to, let's say, DPSing a raid boss. So if anything, as a Kul Tiran, you're not going to see anything different in a raid, maybe something different in PvP and PvE. For Zandalari, you are going to see some differences in PvE, potentially some differences in PvP, mostly on the front of healing. Are the ratios for Zandalari and Kul Tirans busted? I feel like the Zandalari one will self-heal in certain situations, like in a raid or dungeon or 1v1 PvP duels. I feel like there it could be slightly strong. That's the best I'll say. It's slightly strong. I don't want to call it overpowered. I just feel like in certain key situations it could potentially be busted. But because a racial is busted in certain few situations doesn't mean that it's overpowered by default. Kul Tirans, on the other hand, I think they're actually appropriately statted in terms of the cooldown of the racial, the effect of it, and what it does for PvP or PvE. I like this stun without the knockback in player versus player combat because, let's say you stun an enemy, you don't really want to move them all the time. In PvE, I like the fact that in dungeons and in some raids, you can knock an enemy back. I kind of think it could be nice as a healer, let's say, to peel a DPS off of themselves, especially with the fact that it doesn't have a DR. Although that lack of DR could potentially make that racial just a little bit too strong. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see for that one. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think about the Zandalari and the Kul Tiran racials in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another one.